Episode 209, Strengthening Relationships Through Self-Awareness with Tanya Hale.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with a coach? Here we go.
In this episode, Heather is joined by Coach Tanya Hale to discuss the concept of relationship circles and the importance of maintaining a strong sense of self in fostering healthy, intimate connections. Tanya shares insights on how differentiation, empathy, and validation can create a safe space for partners to grow individually and together. They explore how to support one another in times of change and how understanding our own emotional needs can lead to more fulfilling relationships. Tanya also highlights the significance of asking permission before offering advice and staying in our own lane while supporting a loved one. Whether you're navigating tough marital challenges or simply want to strengthen your relationships, this conversation is filled with practical wisdom and heartfelt advice. Please enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. I have Coach Tanya Hale with me. Hello, Tanya.
Hey, Heather.
How you doing?
I'm so great. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. We're recording this November, and Tanya and I just got to be together a couple weeks ago at a retreat that we had. So it's fun to connect there and then just get to continue great conversations here. So thanks for being with me.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, you're welcome. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having this platform for us to share great information.
Yeah, it is amazing. So tell me a little bit about you, Tanya. I know a little bit about you, but I want the listeners to know a little bit about you as well.
All right. My name is Tanya Hale. I have been a coach for over 9 years. But my life coach school training happened 5 years ago. I had a life coach certification before that. At this point, I am coaching tough marriages, people in tough relationship situations. And I just love it so much because we have so many opportunities to clean up our own stuff and to understand how to be more Christ-like, really. I think the biggest thing I love about this work is I feel like it has brought me closer to Christ in the work that I do and the insights that I gain. And it gives me an opportunity to be part of other people's journey in coming closer to Christ and becoming more the kind of person that they want to be as well. So that's what I do. I actually was married for 24 years and got divorced. And that really kind of bumped me on my journey of starting to figure out, how does this happen? I was always a fixer. I was like, I can make anything work. I can do this. I'm strong. And then when I decided to get divorced, I was like, so how does this happen? How do two good people get together and can't make it work and can't figure it out for the life of them? And we just struggled and could not figure out what was wrong. I didn't know what was going on. And so after my divorce, I started to find some information and started to figure things out and put pieces together. And I actually started off my coaching journey with the life coach school as a divorce coach. And I think the first interview that I did with you was about divorce. And I still work with a lot of people regarding divorce because I think that that's part of this difficult, tough relationship process. Is a lot of people come to me saying, listen, I don't know. Do I want to get divorced? Do I not want to get divorced? And how do I figure that out? And so as we work on cleaning up their responses and how they live and how they see their marriage, it helps make that decision more clear for them. And then I also get a lot of people who are like, I don't want to get divorced, but gosh darn it, this relationship, I just don't even know how I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what's broken and what's not working. And I get that because that's exactly where I was for so many years in my marriage. And so helping them to be able to figure that out and how to clean up their own stuff and show up and create a healthier, better space in their marriage for their spouse to show up as well. And I have people who at the end of that, they're like, okay, the data is showing me that this is not a place to stay. But I also have a lot of people who are like, wow, I clean up my stuff, and this is not the same person that I was married to 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just because we have these really negative patterns of behavior that start emerging in our relationships. And Terrence Real, who's a marriage therapist, he calls it the more the more. The more I behave this way, the more my spouse behaves this way, and then the more I behave this way, and that cycle just continues, often in negative directions, very destructive and dysfunctional directions. And so helping my clients to be able to start figure out where their patterns of behavior are that are negative and that are destructive, and how do I identify those, and how do I turn those around? How do I stop engaging in my part of the more? And how do I start creating something different so that we have a different relationship? And so many times we figure out that when I change my behavior, my spouse just naturally feels a safer place to also show up in a better way. And so that's the work that I do with my
Mm-hmm.
clients these days. And I've started doing some couples coaching, which I really appreciate as well, and still work with a lot of singles. And I just, all things tough marriage relationship, I am all over it. I just think it's brilliant and fun. So
Oh, that's so awesome. Especially because there's a lot of people who like that scares them to like
Mhm.
enter into those subjects of conversation helping people because it is like it can be a heavy place, but also
Oh, for
very
sure.
extremely rewarding. As you were sitting there talking, I was thinking about the first time that you and I did a podcast together, and your circumstances were very, very different then. You were a school teacher still, I believe.
Yeah.
You were still
Yeah, I
teaching
was.
school and you were living in a different state than you are now. You were single, and like this is just a different life in just a matter of a couple of years. So,
Yeah, these tools have completely changed the trajectory of my life. So
yeah.
yeah, you're right. I was teaching eighth grade at the time that I started meeting with you and working with you. And I was single. And 2.5 years ago, I met my husband. And with the the implementation, there we
Mhm.
go, of these tools. And and cleaning up so much of my own stuff. And he had cleaned up a lot of his stuff from his previous marriage as well. We have been able to create the most beautiful
Yeah.
relationship, something that I could not have even fathomed could be this easy and this fun before, especially based on my previous marriage experience. And so, these tools are something that my husband and I use all the time in our own marriage. And we always talk about the concepts and the theories, and we implement them. And yeah, I'm in a very, very different place than I was, when I started this journey with you. So
Mhm. I love it. I love watching this. We get to watch it in our clients, but we also get to watch it in ourselves and in other coaches because it's very evident. And anyway, so and
yeah.
I just thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. So you talked a little bit about Terrence Real's more the more, right?
Uh-huh.
And the cycle that can kind of perpetuate. And it is pretty fascinating what two people can create either, I mean, both positively and negatively, right? Like
Hmm.
we like bounce off of each other and we create this. And I think you have explained it in what you call the relationship circle, specifically in marriage. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Oh
Explain
gosh.
that concept?
Yes, absolutely. This is one of my favorite concepts because I think it's such a great visual to help us understand what relationships can look like. So, in contrast to what I'm going to explain, when I was younger, I was shown a visual about relationships, and it was two circles in a Venn diagram. So, two circles that overlap, and the place where they overlapped was described as the marriage, right? And so you've got
Mm-hmm.
two individuals, but we're both like part of the marriage as well. And that just always seemed a little bit weird to me. And it reminded me, do you remember when we were teenagers hearing that story about the man has a bad day at work and the boss yells at him, and so then he comes home and he yells at the wife, and then the wife yells at the child, and then the child kicks the dog. Do you remember that little
Yeah.
story? And I remember even as a teenager thinking, that's just not fair. That's not fair to anybody in the story, that people treat each other that way, and that just because my husband would come home mad, that I would have to be mad, right? That I would
Mhm.
have to anyway. So I never loved that visual of what a marriage was. And so several years later, I found a lady, her name was Kristen Snowden, and I really haven't followed her at all, but I found this visual that she had that I have used, and I call it the relationship circle. And instead of two circles that overlap like that, it's actually three circles side by side, just touching on the edges. And so we have these three circles. Those circles on either end are both of the people in the relationship. So I'm on one end and my spouse is on the other end. And then in between us is a circle that we're both touching, but we're not overlapping. And the circle in the middle is what we call the relationship circle. And as I've done more work, Terrence Real actually calls this the us space, the us place, right? Where the
Which is
us
the title
resides.
of one of his books, right?
Yes, which was a life-changing book for me
So
to
good. So good.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but when we start thinking about us being individuals on the side. So me and my circle, my sense of self, who I am, who I believe I am, my goals, my progress, my struggles, my challenges, my preferences, my personality, all of that is contained within my circle. And I am 100% responsible for that circle. I'm responsible for my ego. I'm responsible for my growth. I'm responsible for my confidence. I'm responsible for all of that. Now, on the other end is my husband in his circle, and he is responsible for all of that for him as well. I'm not responsible for one piece of that. And so we both are in our circles responsible for us. But the brilliant place of the relationship circle, the one that connects us in the middle, I love the idea that it is a completely separate entity from both of us. It sits there independent, and I choose to step into the relationship circle. It's not enmeshed into a piece of me. It is a place that I get to choose to step into. And when I step into it, I am bringing my whole self into that space. And my husband, when he chooses to step in, is also bringing his whole self into that. Now, within that relationship circle, neither of us is responsible for the other person's whole circle, their sense of self, but we do step into a new place of being responsible for the relationship, for showing up in that relationship in a way that is going to build and create this separate entity different than both of us. So this is sometimes referred to as differentiation. And I actually have a definition here that I'm going to read to you. It says, differentiation is your ability to keep your emotional balance while interacting in important relationships. Being able to be closely connected to another human being while also remaining independent from them emotionally. So our spouse gets to show up in this relationship circle. We show up in this relationship circle, and we get to learn how to honor and respect each other's individuality rather than thinking that we need to become enmeshed or we need to become the same person.
Yeah.
So,
Differentiation is a concept that even like not just it's not even just meant for like a marriage relationship, right? Like that's what
right.
we need to learn to be a differentiated human being so that we can have relationships outside of ourselves, because everyone has different opinions, I mean, even in our political and, climate, it's like if we could be a differentiated person, we wouldn't be so afraid of other people's opinions and
Right.
what they see and say. We would be able to maintain relationships, and that's what we need to do in our world and in our relationships. And anyway, I'm kind of taking us off on a tangent, but it is so important to do that work, to be able to be you and
Yeah.
not be threatened by other people.
100%. And that's my circle over there. That is my
Yes.
sense of self. I'm actually with my own podcast right now. I'm in the middle of doing a 5 or 6 like series on just on sense of self and how vital that is and how it works and how it impacts our lives. Because if I don't have a strong sense of self, then I show up in that relationship circle needing really kind of needing my spouse to shore me up, to make me feel strong, to make me feel important. And that's not what that relationship circle is for.
Right.
There is a space for validation in there, but validation in the relationship circle is not to give me a stronger sense of self. Validation within that relationship circle is there to say, I see you showing up in this relationship. I see you being a person who wants to create this separate relationship with me. And I appreciate that. And that's where I think sometimes we get this idea that we shouldn't need validation from other people. Well, for my sense of self, I'm going to say I believe that that's true. But in the relationship, that validation is so vital to say, I see you. And I appreciate you in here. And I want you in here with me. And so this relationship, though, is kind of tricky because as we both show up as different people, we're not in relationship because we want somebody else to fix all of our things or anything else. Because gee whiz, we all have this fierce independent strength where we're like, no, don't tell me what to do. I want to do what I want to do. But so why are we in relationship if we still want to be these independent people? And I think that's such a valid question to ask. Not that you even asked that question, right? But here we go.
But no, I think it's there, right? Like, because
Yeah.
when you teach people to be differentiated, a lot of times in the beginning of that, you run the risk of becoming kind of toxically independent when you first start working on that. And that was me. Like, it was almost like, well, what do I need relationship for then? If I can take care of everything on my own, my needs, my happiness, like, why do I need relationship? Why do I need my spouse? And oh, we do. Like, that's why we're here, right? We're here because on this earth, because we need connection, we need relationship. And it's in those spaces that we learn to be more like our heavenly parents. So, like, differentiated doesn't mean toxically independent, right? Like, it means
Absolutely.
being able to be in relationship with people. Anyway, so you're leading us to the answer, just all the things that people might be saying, but wait, what about, but what about? So anyway,
Ah,
go
and I
for it.
think you bring up a really, really vital point is that we do ask that question. Well, why do I even want a relationship? If I have my own sense of self over here and I'm so strong, why do I want it? Why do I
Yeah.
need it? And we do have this drive, this innate need for connection in our lives. And so if sense of self is so important, then how do I work that with connection? And this is a piece of the relationship circle that I think is so brilliant. I love to imagine within the relationship circle that there's this big table in there. And I get to walk into that circle with my spouse walking in as well, or whoever else. Like, you can imagine this with children or friends or parents or whoever as well. But I walk into this relationship circle and I get to put all my stuff on the table. I might walk in and I might go, oh my gosh, I'm so struggling with this and I'm so struggling with this. And I put all these little pieces on the table. So my spouse's job at that point is to look at those things on the table and look. He doesn't get a touch. Like, we're always just like, nope, hands off. Like, you can't reach down and move them around so that I can see them better. You can't pick them up and manipulate a piece or fix a piece or take it back to your circle to say, I'm going to fix this and then I'll take it back. Like, when I put stuff on the table, my husband's job is to go, oh, wow, baby, that looks so hard. Validate me, validate my struggle, show some empathy, and then just say, wow, that looks challenging. And either ask, how can I support you as you go through this? Or maybe ask me some questions, like, get curious. What are you going to do about that? That looks tough. And so his job, hands off. You don't touch it, you don't fix it, you don't manipulate it. You just look at it. And I don't put it on the table because I want him to fix it. I put it on the table because part of this intimate relationship that we're seeking for is knowing each other and being known by each other. And when I can put my stuff on the table and it's a safe place to put it because I know that he's not going to try and fix it. I know that he's not going to use those pieces against me later on and say, oh yeah, well, you know how, just like how you treated that person in this situation, I can't, he's not going to use it against me. It is a safe space for me to put all that vulnerable stuff. And vice versa. He gets to come in and he gets to say, gosh, this happened today at work and this was really tough. And this person said this and this happened and this, and it's not my job to fix any of it. I get to sit there and I get to look at that stuff on the table again, hands off. And I get to go, oh, wow, that looks like that was such a tough thing for you to go through. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. What do you need from me right now? How can I best support you as you figure this out? And in this relationship circle, we just work so hard to create a safe space for each other, a place where both of us can show up in the inevitable changes and growth and progress that we're going to make in our lives that may or may not be along that same trajectory that we got married in. Sometimes our paths take an unexpected turn and things happen. And yet that relationship circle gets to be a safe place where I say, I see you and I accept you for who you are. And maybe your path has changed from what I thought it would be, but I'm here to support you and to love you and not to change you and not to try and make you be more like me. But the goal in that relationship circle is two individuals showing up, loving and supporting each other and creating a safe space for each other to figure out our own stuff that needs to be figured out so that we can be stronger even in our sense of self.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate that you also added that piece in there when you were like, when you were kind of role playing there, where you said, and how can I help you? How can I support you in this situation? Because that is also a piece of, of a healthy, differentiated person is, at least the way I see it. It's not standing back and being like, I'm sorry, that's got to be hard. But that's an important piece, but also entering ourselves. If there's any way, like, I'm here for you, right? Letting them know I'm here to help you in any way. You let me know. It's not stepping back and being like absent. It's like entering in and I think Terrence Real will call that sometimes, even not necessarily in these situations, but sitting on the same side of the table, right? Like we are on, and even though you're a circular table is your explanation, but like we're sitting together. It's not like we're sitting apart from each other and across from one another. We're sitting together and we want to do this together.
Yeah. I often refer to that as sitting cheek to cheek, right? Like
Yes.
we scooch our little butts around the table and we're
Yeah.
a team,
Yeah.
right? It's you and me against all this stuff on the table. And just creating a really safe space for our person to have some struggles. And like I know that I don't have a current struggle with this anyway, but I know that I work with a lot of clients who they come in and they're like, listen, my spouse has changed their viewpoints on religion and on how they want to show up and what they want to do. And so we talk about it in this context of, listen, they still get to be who they are, and who they are may be different than who they were how many ever years ago when you got married, but they still are showing up. And how can you create a safe space for them to go through this faith remodeling? How can you create a safe space for them to still be who they are and who they are becoming? And if I have a strong sense of self, I am not threatened by them being different than me. I don't get scared or freaked out if my spouse starts to take a different path that goes from what we've both been walking together, because I realize that he is his own person. He gets to make those choices. And my job as a spouse in that relationship circle is to say, okay, he's making this choice. How am I going to respond? That's my only response, regardless of what my spouse puts on the table. They could put on leaving the church, they could put on pornography, they could put on stuff. And I'm not saying that any of those are easy.
Right.
But the work to do in the relationship is to say, okay, they're putting this on the table. How do I want to respond to them putting it on the table? What kind of a person do I want to be? And what kind of a spouse do I want to be? How can I create a safe space for them to figure this out for themselves? Because whatever they put on the table means nothing about me. It's their own journey.
Yeah.
I'm just here to support them and love them as they figure out their journey. And that's what this safe relationship space in that circle is all about, is how do I support them in kind of a trite phrase, but in living their best life. How can I support them to do that and to grow into their next best self, even if it's different than me? And I do that by focusing on, how do I respond to their stuff they put on the table?
Yeah, Absolutely. I have this brain where I can't remember anything from minute to minute anymore, I feel like. And so I when you were sharing those struggles with some clients, like with their spouses going through faith journeys, I am recalling a conversation I had with somebody recently, and I can't for the life of me remember who it was, but they shared with me a conversation that they had had with somebody else. So it was like, twice removed in this conversation, but their spouse was going through what you have described here, like
Mhm.
questioning some things, and you called it a faith remodeling, and I love that. And her response when her spouse had come to her, whoever this person was, because I can't remember, was, "This is so exciting. Like, I cannot wait to
Mm.
figure out, I can't wait for you to share with me what you discover in this journey and what you find." And I thought two things. First of all, that is one lucky
Yeah,
man who
yeah,
has somebody who is supporting him like that. And that is one strong woman who knows who she is and is not afraid of somebody else's journey. Like, she
right.
is willing to be there and she wants to be part of it. Anyway, I love that response, because how many people respond that way? Ooh, I can't wait to figure out, to hear what you discover on this journey of discovery that you feel like you want to go on. Anyway,
Yeah. And that just shows her strong sense of self, right?
yes,
That she doesn't feel
absolutely.
threatened or insecure with
Yeah,
him, changing the trajectory of his path.
yeah.
But
Anyway,
knowing that they can still show up in this relationship circle and still create something really beautiful and
mhm,
magical.
yeah. I think these concepts are so important. Like I said earlier, they are so important in individual relationships. They're so important just as people living in society, as human beings with other people, right? Learning like that strong sense of self. And I'm so excited that you're putting some focus on that in your own podcast, because I think it's really easy for us to lose sight of who we are. In fact, I was just journaling a little bit about that this morning in my own self. Like, I feel like I have done a lot of work and I have a pretty strong sense of who I am, but I've got to check in
Yeah,
frequently, because it's really easy to, like, see what somebody else, who I think somebody else is, and be like, oh, like maybe I should be a little bit more like them, just,
right.
and we have to check in. We have to check in with who we are and who we want to be in all of our relationships. And like, that spousal relationship is the base of, for most of us, right? It's the base relationship of if
Yeah, and I think you're right that that sense of self can get knocked out of off of center
Mhm.
really easily if we're not really paying attention and focusing on who am I, what direction am I going, how am I showing up, what kind of person do I want to be. For me, it's like I feel like I'm constantly addressing that and constantly saying, okay, did I show up today the way that I wanted to show up? Were there places where I didn't? And sometimes people give me feedback and I'm like, oh, ouch. Like that kind of hurt a little bit. And I really have to check myself because that defensiveness can come up. And that defensiveness for me says, well, wait a minute, there's some truth there. If
Mhm.
you're feeling defensive, slow down and look at why you're defensive. And every time I do, I see things about myself that I can clean up. And I think that the cleaner that I am, the more clear I can be on where I'm going and on how I want to show up better next time.
Mhm.
And the more I keep my sense of self strong and as clean as possible and healthy, then the better I can show up in that relationship circle and the more I have to offer to the other person in that relationship. I can offer more kindness because I'm not insecure or scared by things that's going on for them. I can show up better the way I want to be. I can stay in my own lane better, which I think is something that is can be so super hard to do. And that's that whole concept of when they put it on the table, hands off. That's really just staying in my lane. That's saying,
Mhm.
listen, this is yours to work through. And my job as you work through it is to support you in ways that you need. And so a trick that I would share is a lot of times when people put things on the table, we go, oh, they should do this or they should do this. And it would be good if they did this. And we can have lots of ideas. A lot of times they're not going to ask us, and we just are dying to throw in all the advice that we have. And I always work for myself and help my clients understand that's okay. Of course, you're going to have ideas because you're going to see it from a different perspective. But if you want to share something, we always ask permission first. So we always say, you know what? I'm seeing some things here that might be helpful. Would you like me to share them or not? And sometimes they say, oh yeah, I'd love to hear it. And sometimes they say, no, I'm just not in a space right now to hear anything. I just wanted to put it on the table. And guess what? None of that, whether they say yes or no, doesn't mean anything about us. It's their journey. And sometimes we just have things to figure out. But here's the other piece. Even if they say, yeah, share with me what you got, and we share some insight or some advice or something, then guess what? We are back to hands off. If they take that advice and use it, that's great. If they decide that that advice is not a good fit for their situation, that's great too. My job is not to have them follow my advice or do anything like that. My job is to show up and support them the best that I can. And if they decide that what I had to share was not particularly helpful for their specific situation, again, that doesn't mean anything about me. And if I have an insecure or what David Schnarch calls as a reflective sense of self, then I'm going to struggle if they don't accept my help, if they don't accept my offering of great advice. I'm going to feel insecure about that. But if I have a strong sense of self, I can offer advice when it's been, asked for in an appropriate
Right.
way. And then I can let go of it. And I'm not going to feel attacked or unappreciated if they don't follow it. And so this is why that really strong sense of self is so vital if we're going to have healthy, strong, functional relationships, intimate
Yeah.
relationships even, right?
For sure. For sure. Well, thank you so much, Tanya. Such important conversations. And like I said earlier, we all need these. We all need this conversation. We all need to have a strong sense of self. And it can start like just simply by, I think, even just journaling, right? Like coming to know who you are, asking some simple questions and getting like even I think a lot of times we need an outsider's perspective to ask us questions, like whether that is a coach or somebody who you feel like you can trust that can ask you questions to help you really start that journey to discover that so that you can be strong in your own circle, sitting next to the relationship circle. I love that visual. So
Yeah.
excuse me. Tanya, before we go, can you share with people how they can connect with you and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to find me is my podcast. So I've been podcasting for over 5 years. So I just am recording like in the 330s numbers right now, which is mind-boggling to me.
Amazing.
I
Yeah, good for
know.
you.
Who knew that I could do that every week for
Yeah.
5.5 years? Like
Yes.
it's kind of crazy. So yeah, my podcast is called Intentional Living with Tanya Hale. And in fact, I'll even send you some podcasts that have to do specifically with the relationship circle and with sense of self
Okay, that'd be
that
awesome.
that you can put in the show notes. So my podcast is a great place. My website, tanyahale.com, is a place where you can find out what classes I've got available. I have a newsletter that goes out every weekend. And free consults. I do 90-minute free consults with my clients to give them an opportunity to bring situations to me. And we get to coach on them and also talk about, what coaching would look like for them. I also do second Tuesday of every month just to talk with Tanya, just an hour webinar where it's open forum. You get to show up with whatever. And if it's just you, guess what? You get an hour free of coaching. If it's you and 9 other people, we have a conversation, we have a discussion. It just kind of goes wherever. But that's been really, really fun as well. And then I am on both Instagram and Facebook under Tanya Hale LDS Life Coaching.
Awesome.
So
thank you so much, Tanya. We appreciate it. Thank you to all of our listeners for being here today. And we will see you all again next time.
yes, thank you, Heather.
Thank you. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.